read 3 books in February, partially because I recently acquired a subscription to a newspaper and have spent a sizable portion of my reading time enjoying my unlimited access to good journalism. Still, I made the time to read 2 YA books and 1 piece of nonfiction. All of the books I read were written by women. This was not intentional, but I still feel good about it. The first book I read in February was The Last Little Blue Envelope by Maureen Johnson. This is the sequel to 13 Little Blue Envelopes, which I read last year. So, spoilers for that book, I guess. The Last Little Blue Envelope has Ginny going on yet another whirlwind European adventure after someone finds the last letter from her dead aunt that she lost when all of her belongings were stolen at the end of the last book. And Aunt Peg has a whole new mission for her as Ginny is tasked with assembling an art piece that her aunt has left behind for her in pieces that are in various locations that she explored last summer. So Ginny Blackstone, who thought the best and biggest adventure of her life was behind her at the young age of 17, decides to leave home over winter break, putting off the stress of college applications since she can't seem to write her personal essay anyways, and tries to get back all of the letters Aunt Peg wrote to her while finishing the last task that was left to her. I think The Last Little Blue Envelope was a good sequel. It really fit the tone of the first book and helped bring a clearer resolution to the story, as well as a more concrete ending. That being said, I probably wouldn't like this story if I hadn't so thoroughly fallen in love with 13 Little Blue Envelopes. 13 Little Blue Envelopes was a really great coming-of-age story, and The Last Little Blue Envelope was sort of more of a, alright, you came of age, what are you gonna do about that? It was good, but maybe not what I wanted. It still had that sweetness and creativity behind it with the eclectic and eccentric characters that I loved from the first book. It just wasn't right for me from where I'm at now. So I'm giving it 3 out of 5 Little Blue Envelopes. The next book I'm going to talk about is A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahereh Mafi. I devoured this book. This book takes place in an unspecified American town in 2002 and is told by Shirin, a young Persian-American Muslim girl who wears a hijab. That was a rough time to wear a hijab, as hate crimes against Muslims were occurring quite frequently. I originally intended to say that anti-Muslim assaults were at an all-time high after 9/11, but then I did some fact-checking. And according to a 2017 FBI report, anti-Muslim attacks have been on the rise since early 2015 and have surpassed post-9/11 levels of anti-Muslim hate crimes. So that sucks. Fact-checking is important, but facts are depressing. This did, however, make the casual bigotry and Islamophobia that occurred in this book feel very familiar and relevant because of our current situation. The book also acts as a frame to show how our current political climate was built. The narrator, Shirin, isn't surprised by the awfulness of people anymore. She has been to 12 different schools in her lifetime and has hardened herself to the people around her because whatever terrible, ignorant thing they do won't matter. She cares about her family, fashion, and learning how to breakdance with the crew her big brother assembled. She doesn't want to care about the misplaced rage of white people. She just expects people to be hateful, so she is surprised when she meets Ocean, who is kind and not awful to her. Ocean, who she barely notices, even as he keeps being a part of her life. Ocean, who claims to be willing to turn his back on every hateful, racist person in the town he has lived in his whole life, once he figures out that the people in his life are in fact hateful and racist, even though he never noticed it before because of his privilege. This book is actually a really sweet high school romance. It's just that your life doesn't get to be that simple when other people politicize your very existence. I think everyone should read this book, and I'm giving it 4 out of 5 breakdancers. Last book I read was We Are Not Yet Equal: Understanding Our Racial Divide by Carol Anderson. This book was recommended to me by my friend Norali, who, while I was working on a list of non-fiction book recommendations to pair with The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. And I can't thank her enough for this recommendation. We Are Not Yet Equal maps out the history of racial injustices in America in a really in-depth and detailed way that forces readers to remember that history is built by people, and the stories of those people can often be lost when we study things in the macro sense. Everything we learned about or didn't get to learn about in our history classes was a lived experience by human beings, by the people that came before us. It is an incredibly engaging book that shows how we built the world we live in now, with stories from the Reconstruction era to our modern time. It shows how policies were built to specifically advantage white people and how those policies were used to disenfranchise black people and still perpetuate anti-blackness today. It shows how racism on an individual level was accepted and backed up by institutional racism that we still have to deal with today because the effects of institutions are long-lasting. Carol Anderson masterfully weaved a narrative of race in the United States. I'm giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. Those are all of the books I read in the month of February. I'm falling a little bit behind on my reading goal of 75 books this year, but that's okay. I'll get to it. Please tell me what you're reading down in the comments, and I'm hoping to read a little bit more in March, even though I'm basically making a video every day throughout the whole month. We'll see how that works out. And if you want to see more from me, you can subscribe, watch another video of mine, or support me on Patreon. And hey, I love you.